So now I think we can move on to the first Q&A. And of course, the other three colleagues are also welcome to answer if they have something to say. I see some of the questions are a little bit interconnected, so maybe we will answer a few of them in one go. How do the employers test your software knowledge, programming skills? Is there a way to prepare for that? I don't know if any of you is.
I can take that if you want, because I literally interview candidates all the time.
Okay.
So yeah, they do test your software skills, and usually there's a coding interview. When it's in real life, it's usually on a whiteboard, and they'll ask you to write code to perform some sort of task, and then ask you questions about your solution. If it's remote, then we use some collaborative tools to write code online, so that the candidate can write the code, and then the people doing the interview can look at it and again assess, if they're doing it well, ask them questions. Sometimes we ask them about performance issues, but mostly about code quality, because there's only so much you can do in an hour. And also the candidate is nervous, and it's a really weird environment to write code in.
Okay, thanks a lot. That was, by the way, Attila Neves, who is going to introduce himself after the break. He's a software engineer consultant, so I think it was probably a very relevant answer. I don't know if any of the other speakers would like to add something else.
So I can say from my perspective that when I'm interviewing people, I use kind of a different system depending what I want to achieve. So I had interviews which were purely, whiteboard interviews like you would at Google. So back, when we weren't all remote and we could interview candidates on site, I have an experience of, getting a candidate to the whiteboard, telling him, so how would you design an API for something that, does a specific thing? And we just go and we talk over the whiteboard. So this is one scheme, and there is a lot of resources about this. You just put into Google, how does interview at Google look like, and you know exactly what that is. Now at Red Hat, what we have is kind of a different system. So we don't do this theoretical stuff anymore because it's just not feasible. People hate that. So it's more about talking about some practical problem, getting some particular not invented problem. So I won't get you on the interview and tell you, so now this is Google Doc, which we will be sharing, and can you please implement a list in Python? Because this is boring stuff and you will never do it in your life. But I will tell you that I have this problem and this is my code base, and I will show my code, and then we can talk about that. So this is, I think, a different way of doing this. And then as a candidate, it has this benefit that if you can really, read someone's code and go around it, you can very easily show me that you understand what happens. Because of course, writing your code from scratch is something else, but being able to jump into someone's code base and work on this, it's yet another skill that is very, very powerful to have.
Okay, very interesting to have.
I agree with.
Yeah, Carolina, please.
Sorry, I agree with what Matteo said. I mean, when I interview candidates, typically I just try to see if they have like the academic skills that will allow them to pick up a code that is written from someone else and then continue to work on it. I know that by experience, because I tried to interview a year ago for Google, Amazon, and other private companies, and then I decided not to pursue those opportunities because I didn't line up with the values of the company. But when during the interview process, there are different resources that you can find online to prepare yourself with like coding challenges, and there are books that have examples. And the main thing that the big five, Google, Facebook, and so on look for is just complex algorithms and see that you can actually write it. What often happened for me is like they will ask me to code in one language, and then during the interview, they will try to see if I can just switch to a different one. So I think they just want, the companies just wants to see that you are versatile, but definitely there is a lot of prepping work, especially to go into the private sector. Typically it takes about like a month or two of prepping if you really want to be super prepared for those.
Okay, I think Marco wants to add something else.
Yeah, I'd like to add the interviewed version of the story as well. What we did here was Riverlane was trying to think what is a good way to show what we're doing as well. So I am familiar with LeetCode and all the platforms that let you do all the Google and Facebook and type of challenges, but this is not what you do on a daily basis. So we have coding challenges that are what kind of alike what you will do in the job when you start, and we send them offline so people don't stress. As in real life, you don't have someone looking at your shoulders when you're coding. So we try to make it friendly for people, and this is normally a good sign of culture. While I think that the live interview is always stressful, and the bubble sort and all those kind of things, that people, we study them by heart, and I don't need to test them. So this is our experience interviewing like quite a few people in the past.
Okay, thanks for that, Marco. I see there's a person called Elias with raised hand. I don't know, Elias, if you want to make any comment regarding this question. Yes?
No, I had another question, actually, simple one. Just in general, for us working in academia, then how do you avoid getting bored transitioning into industry?
I see this question has been asked also in the Q&A. There's people, another very similar. What do you dislike about working in industry? So there seems to be some fear from people in academia to go to industry. So what can you tell us about that? Who wants to take this one?
So I can start on this one, and I will start on the very first thing that you, Elias, mentioned. How do you avoid getting bored? And from what I see, I think the problem may be reversed, because when you are doing, for example, PhD, you spend usually between 3 and 5 years working on one thing, because you don't do PhD from 10 different things. You start your PhD during the first year, you need to kind of pick up the subject, and then you spend 3 up to 5 years, if you are unlucky, up to 7, doing this one thing, whether you like it or not, because you've chosen. And during last year of your PhD, you cannot change the subject anymore. Whereas if you go to private sector, it is very rare that you will spend 5 years working on the same project. You know, if you are the unlucky one in the sense that you land in a team with highest velocity, then once every half a year, you will be changing the project. So I'm not sure the level of, you know, being bored is anyhow comparable for the disadvantage of the industry. So I would say that if you can get bored somewhere, then you will get bored in academia, not in the industry.
Okay, Gurhan, you want to add something there? I see this is a bit controversial. I see some comments also in the chat saying PhDs are great. So I guess it really depends on each person and its experience. Please, Gurhan.
Yeah, PhD, nothing to say, take away anything from the PhDs, but just like to emphasize there is that first, it depends where you are working and what kind of work. As a software engineer, when you're working for a product, the product evolves, new challenges come. In industry, things change, move very fast. Like 1 week you are working on something, next week you're doing something else, your whole team changes, the interactions with the customer changes. So so it's a very fast-paced transition, and the only thing which is, let's say, constant in industry is change. So I think that you might not have that problem. At least that's my personal opinion.
Carolina also wants to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I've been for 8+ years in the research environment, and just to respond to what Matthias was saying, and I didn't do a PhD, but like I worked on the same subsystem for about 7 years. I'm definitely not bored, because those are very complex subsystems. There is so much to learn. There are so many different ways to learn deeper into it. You know, you start as a software engineer, and you can also start learning about the hardware. I mean, there is no like a boundary of where you stop learning. It's more about like your personality, how you present yourself to the company. I personally didn't line up with the values in the private sector, but I believe that if you're marketable and you show a strong will, they will allow you to move into different projects and keep you entertained, especially if you're very good at what you're doing, because nobody wants to lose a good resource. So they will always find a good placement if it's a good company. If it's not, then it's time to move on.
Very good. I think we've been reassured that moving to industry or staying in academia doesn't need to be boring, but the contrary for many different reasons, right? So I suggest we move on to another question that appears a few times in the Q&A, which is salaries. I will read the first one. Changing to industry, data analysis, research engineer, but also generally, how can one realistically estimate what a realistic salary would be? With no real prior experience in industry, I lack a frame of reference. So,
can I take that one?
Yeah.
I think I had a pretty big challenge moving from Europe to the US. So what I did to try to understand what was a good pay base, it was look at the cost of rent for the areas where you're looking into relocate, for example, and get an estimate of like how much expenses would you have moving into that area or staying where you're at, like how much is your expense and so on. And then I will also use, you know, there are so many tools online on Glassdoor and so on to research based on your experience level, what is the salary to go for. I think at the beginning, it's always good to be a little humble, but also not to a point that you put yourself into a situation where the salary you're gonna accept, it doesn't allow you to live in that non-stressful financial life. So I started with a pretty low salary at Slack when I first moved, but I knew that it was a big opportunity to move to the US, and that, you know, you continue to build up from that.
Very good, Carolina. Thanks for that tip. It's, I think, very useful for people maybe considering moving to the US. The rest of the colleagues, maybe working for private companies, maybe your experience would be also Marco.
Yeah,
sorry,
I was about
Marco
to say.
Oh, you can go ahead.
No, you can go ahead first.
Okay, sorry, quick. I was just adding to Carolina. There is Glassdoor. There are other platforms, and recently recruiters have been publishing market analysis. So embedded software developer, front-end software developer, with a range of salaries, at least in the UK. I know something similar has been done in Germany. So maybe befriend some recruiters on LinkedIn, and then you will see when they publish this type of reports. It's normally a quarterly or twice a year type of review. So you can see how the market is moving, and then you do everything Carolina has said on top of that, and you're good. I mean, at least you can get a feeling for. And companies have bands, so it's more about landing on the right seniority, if you want, in the company. Then that's what probably helps you more. Try to understand how to become a senior, how to become a principal, how to become a whatever level you want.
Okay, very good. Khurram?
Yeah, just like to add a couple of more sentences to that. I think Nordic countries, you can easily find these data. The salaries are very open, like for different positions, for entry level, what kind of salaries are. So that I can say. I looked for the same when I was applying for Danfoss, and salary survey, those are those places. But all the, let's say, the companies, most of the good companies, they already have some kind of a bracket, something in mind already, or they know already what's a good starting salary for if you're just starting right out of the academia. So I personally also think that the more important thing is the opportunity, that if you are getting a good opportunity and you see that you can grow in that place, that's, in my opinion, can play a big role as well. But as Carolina said that, you don't have to sell yourself so low as well. So you need to see the place where you're moving in, what kind of expenses you have, and that gives you a very good idea, and how much taxation is there. So all those things you have to keep in mind, and they can help you.
Very good. So Kurram is working in Finland. We'll hear from him later. We'll know all the details. Irtasa, I think you want to add something as well.
Yeah, just a quick note, also adding to what Khurram said. What I do, and I'm working in Germany, what I like to do is just to ask the recruiter himself, like they have like a pay grade in mind already for the position, and you can just ask if you can get like a range of the pay grade that you're applying for the job you're applying for, and they mostly give you like a range that is possible for the position.
Very good, Irtasa. So we will also hear from Irtasa later on. You will have more details from his experience. I see some exchange in the chat. I think that's good. Let me continue maybe the Q&A. So there's another question. Having all your code on a repository on a CERN GitLab instance, how would you prove your coding skills and your experience as a developer? I think this question has appeared also more times in the Q&A. So I think this is a concern for the people. What could you say? What was your experience? How could you show your coding skills when, for instance, using CERN internal repositories? Was this an issue? How did you overcome that?
As a recruiter, I'd say move some of it to GitHub. So, I mean, if it's not publicly available, it's going to be impossible for me to look at the code. So,
yeah. So moving things to GitHub could be an option. Was there other people in that situation? Carolina?
I mean, we've talked about like how there are coding challenges during the interview process to prove yourself and so on. I think being able to explain your code, it does help during the interview as well. And I think there are a lot of people that work in the private sector as well that they're not allowed to show code that you know, they developed for their well working. I mean, I wouldn't bring up the code of the timing system for the whole accelerator during an interview and show it to people. But I think it's okay to show significant snips or describe a block diagram of how the algorithm works for the specific code that you're talking about. That's definitely something that I've done as well. Like, you can show the different, just doing like a flow chart of how the code works, and you can put some parts of the code. I think that's okay to do it.
Okay, so probably there should, Mateusz, sorry, you want to add something?
Yeah, so also one thing from my side, because it wasn't said here. I think what's also important, and in a lot of cases it is doable, is that when you work somewhere and you write code, you try to work also with upstream open source communities. So you don't only write a code which goes to your employer's GitLab private instance, but you are always using some tools. It's almost impossible that you work on a code which doesn't include and then take some public components. So try there, because then during the interview, when I'm getting someone and I see that he contributes to projects which are out there used, then it's a huge plus for me. So even if you have a very nice, perfect project on GitHub, but it's only your project and no one uses it, it has lower value than if I see that you contributed, even if only a bit, to a huge project that is, somewhere out there. I don't want to name anything specifically, but take some package from Python and maybe work with this. You do some calculation, you do some data analysis with Python package. You notice that it's not there, so you write your code. Make this code public in this sense, put it upstream to this package. Take PyData. Maybe PyData is missing some tool that you need. Write it, send it to PyData so that it's in PyData. Because if I see that you landed this code in the library itself, this is, then I want to work with you. Then you are going to be most likely the person that I hire. If on the other side, I have a person who just writes the code, put it to the closet, and this is it.
Okay, I see very practical tips here, very useful. Probably, I hope you can all stay in the networking session because you can maybe share a little bit more on this. I suggest we take one last question and then we go to the short break before the next round of presentations. So there is a question. As Atlas researchers, we program mostly on Atlas software, for example, Athena. How can we transit such skills and introduce ourselves to the industry? So any tip there from people who have spent a lot of years working on a particular piece of software very specific for CERN? How can you afterwards sell this in your interviews or in your CV? Do you think this is an issue? Do you think people would understand that you are you have experience developing software, even if it's for something very specific, very internal for CERN? Any thoughts on that, Marco?
I would say that people, when they're hiring, they will look at what type of experience you had as in managing the development or the team or anything. So I'm expecting that someone that if you don't have a matching language or a matching programming language, I mean, that the company is looking for, but they need someone that can manage a team or that can learn quickly and develop something, they will be keen to interview you. And then it's about if there is a coding challenge, be ready for that and practice yourself, use the platform we discussed before. You will have to transition somehow to a new language, to a new programming language. So that's unavoidable, but I would not say that people, the industry and academia will not judge you on the basis of what framework you use, but what kind of skills you can bring to the table.
Very good. Yeah, I think it's in line with some tips shared in the chat. So people should not be afraid, I think, of maybe explaining a little bit more about some projects that may not be known to other fields of expertise. And of course, some of these products are open source and so on. Carolina, you want to add something?
Just to add to what Marco was saying, just use the, if you're worried about showing a company that you're versatile and you can switch and you can learn something that is different from what you've been working on for a long time. I mean, we've said this, I think all of us a couple of times already. It's good to work on your own project and try to do something that is visible and out there as well. I mean, we definitely had a lot of candidates that we interviewed and hired that were just out of college with small experience, and they had worked on there is a lot of data on the internet, so they have made their own algorithms and their own code to just show that they can program and they can learn and just continue to show that you can learn and you can adapt. I guess that's the most important thing, that you can still adapt, and that's just with the environment that you were working on, and be able to explain and use flowcharts or there are coding challenges that will test you. So but there is a lot that you can do on your own as well to show that.
Okay, thanks a lot for this first Q&A. I think a lot of useful tips and answers have been given. So I hope people in the audience took back some of these replies, and I hope they will be useful for them. So there's a very interesting question. How would you compare working environment and management attitude compared to our CERN culture? So I guess comparing with industry. Who would like to take this one? So working environment and management attitude in your current jobs compared to your experience at CERN, what are the differences or similarities? Khurram?
Yeah, well, I worked back in 2016, 17, and I don't know how situations are now, but what I can say that I enjoy my work-life balance quite much now, but that is what, again, Nordic countries are famous for. So it's, yeah.
Okay, so better work-life balance in Nordic countries compared to CERN. What else? Other reactions, maybe people from other countries?
So what I can say from my experience is that, so I was in IT department. My feeling is, okay, so just so people don't think me wrong after what I say. I'm very positive about CERN IT department. It does that when I was staying there, I had a feeling that unless you are very self-motivated yourself and you push for your project to get done, no one will do it for you. So if you wanted to spend your whole fellowship just sitting and doing nothing, no one would stop you from doing this. And in general, you know, I don't see it as something very positive because it's good for people who can manage themselves very well, but there is a lot of people who need someone to drive them, to push them a bit. And from my perspective, this is something that at CERN was missing back when I was there. So I would say that, you know, in industry, you don't really have that because you cannot sit for 2 years and don't deliver a product. Someone is going to notice much, much faster than you are not doing your job. So from my perspective, this is a difference. And yeah, whether it's positive or not, it really depends on you, what you want. Because of course, you may have an attitude, I don't judge, that you just want to, you know, get the salary and then this is it. You don't want to deliver anything. But if you really want some help into, you know, getting motivated and so on, I think it's better in the industry rather than at CERN.
Okay, thanks for that, Mateusz. I suggest we move on to the next question. We often hear that physicists are bad coders, entre guillemets. How do you gauge your code skill levels? Which jobs you are qualified enough to apply for?
I don't think you should even think that way. Just apply for jobs and be confident in your skills now and try to self-develop further. It is true that, you know, there is that saying, and it's for a reason sometimes, but if you're wondering about that, you're probably better than average.
Okay, so that's a comment for boosting self-confidence. So it's a negative stereotype we shouldn't trust. Okay.
I think another way to do that is like also doing self-development, just like he said, taking classes at the different colleges, and just mention that, highlight it in the CV, just to prove that you know the basics, you know the standards. There are courses on Coursera that do not take months to get through, and it's still like some sort of certification that you can show them. And again, self-confidence when you're there.
Very good. So do you have any suggestions, advice on where to look for software jobs? This is, I think, a good one, probably very useful for many people. How did you guys look for your jobs?
So the usual places, I'd say LinkedIn is a very big thing that people should use, and whatever job sites they know. And obviously, as always, networking. Most jobs aren't actually ever advertised because people will look for somebody they know first. And if they can't fill that role, then they'll advertise that job externally. So.
Probably the alumni network is a very good place as well.
Right.
Type of events, yeah. Carolina, sorry, you wanted to add as well?
I would just say that like try to understand where would you like to work and what are companies that will fit your values in that particular area, or where you're looking at, and then go on their website directly. So you can notice something like on LinkedIn that maybe it's not the best perfect fit for you for that particular posting, but it shouldn't stop you from going to the specific website and then look at their opportunities, job postings for different positions, and then see if there is something that it's a better fit.
Good. Khurram, you want to add something as well?
Yes, I can just add the same, that if there are networking events, do attend them. How I got this job where I am, I was in a networking event. I just went to the person who was from Danfoss and I said, I'd like to work for your company. And of course, I have researched them before, but what people will be coming there, and that just started the whole process, and we got back. So I think there's a huge power in these networking events, and especially if you can meet face-to-face people.
Very good. Iltasa?
Yeah, I would again highlight LinkedIn, because there are companies available that you might haven't heard of, because only the big companies are the most known companies that you would apply for. But there are a lot of other companies available on that you can look for on LinkedIn that are very interesting positions, open positions, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. So LinkedIn networking, very important. Simona has reminded people about the alumni platform, where I think you can even share job posts from your company. So please make use of all these tools, of course. Okay, so another question. Do you have to start from a junior position, which are quite scarce at the moment? Is trying for the mid-regular level a sensible idea? What is your experience there?
I already answered this one on the chat. So I would say simply like this: do not start as junior. If we are talking here on this kind of ground that you are at CERN, you are physicist, but you have contact with software development and so on, by no means don't apply to junior jobs, because who is expected, from us as people who are hiring, when we are going through CVs of people who are junior, those are positions for people with zero experience, like, fresh university graduate. This is someone who I would see as a profile for junior, someone whom I know may have theoretical knowledge, but he never did real stuff. If you already did something, doesn't matter, data analysis for physics or whatnot, go for regular, because you already have those skills, which we feel is the gap between junior and regular. So definitely don't try to put yourself into lower position, because it's no good. And also what is important, even if you apply for senior, and at some point during the process, we feel that maybe you are regular, maybe you are not a senior, we will notice this during the process, and in the worst case, we'll just tell you, we don't feel you are senior, we can offer you regular, are you happy with this? So that's it. But don't start from junior, because once you start from junior, it will be very hard for you to prove during the process that you are better than the other juniors that we have on the plate.
Attila is first, and then Carolina. They want to react on that.
Sure. I disagree wholeheartedly, especially because I got hired as a junior and I got promoted 6 months later. I don't even think it was 6 months, it was like 4. And if I didn't go for that position, I wouldn't have gotten hired and I probably would have left.
Mm-hmm. Carolina, you were nodding, so you have maybe similar.
Yeah, I was hired as a non-junior position, and then I stayed in the same non-junior position for about 5 years. So I think it's all about how well you're fitting the job posting that you're applying for. In Matteo's company, it's probably best to not sell yourself too low. And if your skill set fits for a non-junior position, then just go for it. I don't think there is a formula that is the same for every company. I think it's all about like, what are you applying for? What can you bring to the plate with that as your skill set, and how well are you fitting with that position? Because right now we're talking about like, oh, we are programmers and we are applying for a programming position, and this is just an assumption. But what if you want to transition to like an FPGA engineering and you have, 4 years of experience of software engineering, but you only have 1 year of experience of FPGA? It's all about like, what are you applying for? How well are you fitting for that position? And how can you market yourself? But most companies will promote you if you're, if you're proving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then maybe it's not a good fit again.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, there's another question. I think there are some concerns about the situation in industry these days. How hard being both overqualified and underqualified as a fresh computer science PhD graduate affects the transition into a software engineering position in the current hiring freeze situation of the industry? How hard do you think it would be? Hundreds of CVs required or just dozens of CVs? It's a long question. I don't know if you have the Q&A in front of you, but I think it's this concern that it may be difficult these days to go through the recruitment process with a PhD in computing science. Is it too much? Is it too little? What would you advise?
I don't think it's overqualified.
Mm-hmm.
I think the underqualified might apply because you haven't done anything yet, but I don't think it's overqualified.
I think it's a bit linked with the previous question, probably. So, okay. This one, I think it has been answered already. How would you prepare for interviews and work in industry? I think you have all shared a lot of tips, a lot of online resources, even books. They are in the chat. So maybe we can move on, and if people want to know more about this during the networking session, maybe you can still ask particular colleagues if you want to know more of a particular area. Let's move on to the next question. If you have worked within big groups at CERN, do you feel like the level of bureaucracy out in industry is similar, better, or worse?
Just the same.
What do you think?
It's the same.
It's
The
the
bureaucracy
same.
everywhere.
I think if you are like a student, a technical student, you are sheltered a lot from the bureaucracy. So you get more of a taste of that.
Yeah, the more senior you become, probably the more you suffer bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Probably everywhere.
You just can't escape it.
Depends on the company as well, I guess, and in the way it is organized.
Right. I would say it's better when your team members fit well with your personality and everything. So that will help make it better.
Okay. So don't be afraid of bureaucracy in or outside CERN. So, what is your favorite part of working in industry? What would you say? Khurram, you already mentioned work-life balance as something positive in your company.
Yeah, but since working in both sides, yes, that's definitely work-life balance. But I think the biggest thing is that what I'm doing actually, when I wake up and go to work, what I'm doing is I'm trying to solve some of the challenges which the world is facing, and when I see that I'm contributing, that just makes my day. So just the bigger picture.
Very good, very inspiring. Mateusz?
Yeah, so from my side, I think this is very important point to mention, because I know a lot of people who are in the research area and they are missing this part of the reward of their work. Like, if you're very deep into physics research and you write those papers and to discover stuff, there is a very long path between you work on something and you see the outcome in real world. Like, take even discovering the Higgs. How many years did it take from inventing this idea into proving this. Whereas in industry, once you start working on something, you can see the real life, result and people using this in half a year. So you get very quick feedback from the world whether what you did makes sense or not. And I think this is, important part of the work in the long run. Otherwise, you can get bored and all this kind of stuff. Like, you just do your job for years, and you have no idea if it makes sense or not.
Okay, Attila?
I'd say the relative stability of it all. I still remember laughing when I signed the contract with Cisco because it had no end date.
Okay, good. Very good. Any other reactions? If not, we have 3 questions left. I think we can try to answer them all and then we go to the break. I am finishing my PhD by the end of the year. How early before finishing do you think is a good time to apply for positions? So a very practical question. Any tips on that?
So from my experience, if you apply for a job and this is kind of an opening that we need to really hire someone, not this rolling hiring that we keep opening all the time. But if you're the open position because you want to hire, we can close the whole process in like 1 month. So this is what you should estimate, that if you send me CV and I have a position, in 1 month from today, we can go through the whole interview and sign a contract. So try to take this as something, how fast can you go through the process? On the other hand, if you start looking today for a job that you can start only in January 2024, in a lot of positions, unless you bring some very specific knowledge that we want, we may tell you that this is too long because it's like 9 months. I would try to balance this around the average notice period in the country where you apply for. So if you are looking for a job and the standard in this country is to have 1 week of notice period, if you come and you say, I can start in half a year, again, unless you are really the person that we want, or we have a long running project, it will be a bit too long. On the other hand, if the average in the country is 3 months of a notice and you come and say, I can start in half a year, no one will ask anything because it's normal, because it's not such a big difference. So I would say try to benchmark it against the market where you apply. For specific example, in Switzerland, if you're a candidate in Switzerland and you say that you can start in half a year, that would be okay. Probably someone would start asking you, but why so long? Can you start a bit faster? But if you say, like, really, no, I cannot because I have, still stuff to finish, you will get the deal with even, in half a year. So I would say like this.
Yeah, okay. Khurram wants to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I will say that it depends actually what do you like to work and the company and the position as well, just what Matthias was saying as well. I know from my personal experiences, okay, in my case, I applied 6 months ago. So right after I actually left the CERN, I applied for the job which I got. But my sister, she has also worked at CERN as a fellow for a couple of years, and she applied to Google and Apple, and I remember she had to go through quite many interviews, and so it completely it can be based on the position. It can be many factors.
So maybe it's worth using the networking contacts if you're targeting a particular company or in area to try to find out more, so you can plan in advance. Okay, very good. Okay, I see more questions coming. I don't know if we will be able to answer them all, but let's see. After working at CERN, is the only way to keep your salary level to stay in Switzerland? Is the difference in salary so different for regular senior positions in Switzerland and outside? So this is a little bit about salary. People nodding.
I mean, it depends on what you were doing at CERN before. If you're a PhD student, then obviously you're going to make a lot more money. If you're a senior staff position, I'm not sure you're going to be in this call anyway, but And yes, the salary definitely varies a lot between Switzerland and a lot of other places. A lot.
Yeah. Okay, so it is true that we have another Q&A after the tip session. So maybe we can stop here. Khurram, I saw you raise your hand. I don't know if you want to make a quick comment.
Yeah, I just say that there are differences, and the salaries are mostly country to country as well for the same position. So I think it's not a realistic, it should not be a realistic hope that you can get the same salary.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So thanks a lot for the answering the second Q&A.